Hi, we're back with Deep Images. Today I've got CF Roberts and Chris Gilpin, and we are continuing to tread on the soil of zombies here. It's very fertile soil. Sometimes it's rancid, but sorry, I have a cough drop today.
Yeah.
Today I think we're going to pass it back over to Mr. Roberts for his second selection in this session. From he covered Death Dream a couple of episodes ago. So, what would you like? What do you have for us, sir?
Okay, this goes directly to the personal, and it's one probably no one's ever seen. I've talked to the producer about possibly uploading this to YouTube. He said he was thinking about it. It might happen, it might not. But if you luck out, you may get to see it. This one goes back to the year 2000, and once again, I get to tell my old war stories because this came from right here locally,
Which
uh,
is where, for the audience's sake.
Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Okay.
And at the time, we had a film festival. It was in the process of changing hands at one point. A couple of us wound up getting into the first one. We wound up kind of being juried as part of a group of local filmmakers, and me and my roomie actually won a prize. But we were gearing up for the second one. I was working on this kind of 40-minute documentary, and next door there were another couple of guys woodshedding on this other thing, and it was kind of a hillbilly zombie movie. And so these two guys who I became fast friends with, because a lot of us on that scene did become fast friends, were Joel Katner and Shane Stedham, and they did a movie. They did a little movie. It was real nice and tight. It was probably less than an hour long,
Hmm.
and it was called Golgotha, Arkansas. And pushed, one thing led to another, and a bunch of us had some really good stuff to show. And the the local festival kind of changed some hands and eventually fell into the hands of the Ozark Film Society, who wound up dissing most of the locals, including us. And that led to a whole other ball of wax that I'm not getting into. But one thing led to another. We wound up
Hey,
putting together.
don't get the channel sued, Chuck.
No, the locals wound up basically kind of going off on on our own, going DIY and
Oh,
doing our own festival.
gotcha.
But and that wound up turning into another whole ball of wax. But balls of wax notwithstanding, we had this film, Golgotha, Arkansas. Out of a lot of what a lot of us were producing at the time, probably wound up being the best of the bunch.
Okay.
And had a cast of maybe about three people, including Joel and Shane, the aforementioned.
Were you in the cast?
No, I had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
The aforementioned, just there were probably a handful of people, most of whom appeared under assumed names, and quite a few extras, a number of extras, and the plot, which is pretty bare bones and pretty tight. This thing looked beautiful for what, just kind of a little DIY handmade movie. Shot in black and white, or at least edited in black and white. Just very atmospheric,
Hmm.
and the story involved a couple, who are never named. They're, a man and a woman, and no names are ever given, but they're on the run from some kind of shady deal. Something happened to them, and you only get the barest of bones. You get to them having, in the beginning, just sitting on the street, having kind of a terse conversation, And then they go out to this rural farmhouse and doing some stuff to kind of cover things up. You see her pulling a machete out of out of the trunk and kind of trying to conceal it. And so they've been involved in some kind of deviltry, God knows what. This
Devil Tree.
this place that they're going to go lay low at is actually the woman's family homestead, and you see in a few little just brief flashbacks that only ever let you know just the very basic things you have to know. And she sees a flashback of her mother. You learn that her mother was involved in some kind of wacko religious cult, and you see her just wearing a prayer cloth and yelling in a flashback, "Oh, don't bother me while I'm out here." And just every time you see that, it's just kind of very veiled, very spooky. And she was involved with this charismatic reverend and a bunch of other stuff. And the man and the woman hide out in the house. The whole time they're hiding out in the house, they start having these spooky dreams and visions that involve them being trapped in the house, involve just like they're making out at one point, and he looks up and she's rotting and vomiting blood, and he freaks out, and then she's back to normal and laughing at him, and what's going on here? And eventually this guy comes strolling up to the house. This guy with a hook for a hand, who kind of looks like he's almost like the Robert Mitchum character in Night of the Hunter.
Oh my.
Yeah, just wearing the big wide brimmed hat and everything. Is howdy, folks. And he is the Reverend, and he starts conversing with them, and he is
This is water, by the way.
uh,
I normally act this way. Go ahead.
water, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, not what you would think it would be for me, but go ahead, Chuck. Sorry.
Yes, hydration for life. Anyway, so he stands over them, and you learn that he is the Reverend who is part of this church that her mother was a part of. And says, "Oh yes, I know all about you. Yeah, the your mother was a great friend of the church. I know a lot of folks who were great friends with the church." And he starts making these arcane pronouncements and doing a prayer over them, which they're not into, but they're just standing there stock still while he, implores to the heavens. And the further he goes, he starts speaking in tongues. Sounds
Oh,
almost like he's speaking Sumerian, and then they both pass out.
hmm.
They wake up. They wake up at some point later, and they're just in incredible pain. They're all groaning and slumped over, and they crawl into the house. And he keeps showing up, and it just shows up at one point. And he just says, "Yeah, I know you folks are hurting, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn up the air conditioning a whole lot. It's not going to make things any more comfortable for you. Bill, keep away the flies." And so, as a situation, the the man eventually goes to town, or what passes for town around these parts, which is just a gas pump. And there's this crazy old hermit out there chewing on beef sticks and just trying to smoke beef sticks and like cheese. And he's trying to light these things up and smoke them. He's got garlic around his neck. And the guy says, "What is that for?" Said, "What do you think it's for?" And that is Joel Katner. He's just
Okay.
probably the best photog here in this town.
And you
And
said he co-wrote this movie also?
yeah, I think the two of them wrote and or produced it or something
Gotcha.
in that area, but they did everything.
Okay.
And he's obviously afraid of something in that area. Well, what you learn is the Reverend is basically taking these guys and zombifying them and adding them to his cult. And you see him just kind of going over the procedure. He's got embalming machines and he's sewing their eyes shut. He's
Oh
doing all
my.
this crazy stuff. And eventually, just, there's sewn eyes and everything. He puts sunglasses on them so you wouldn't notice. And there's this, and it's basically kind of like a variation on the whole Haitian zombie theme. And you've got this
Okay.
whole congregation just shambling through the field, just a couple of dozen people, all wearing sunglasses, all looking dead, and they have now been assumed into this cult, and that's the end of the movie.
So from the title of the movie and what you're describing, I'm assuming the allegory, I could be wrong, is that people who follow fundamentalist charismatic churches are zombies, basically.
Yeah, well, you could be an argument could be had that religion is the greatest monster.
I mean, I grew up in North Carolina, so what I just said is definitely true here when I was growing up.
Yeah, it's
They don't
a
eat
lot of it's
flesh, but otherwise they act like zombies. You know, they're
a lot of
just,
it's very true in Arkansas.
yeah.
Just very nasty
My
zombies.
mom fell victim to the born again movement, and the speaking in tongues thing was just, I don't know. I can't tell you how happy I was when I finally got a copy of the Black Sabbath album Born Again, because I would just crank that thing up, man.
Uh,
And my mom's like, "What's the name of that noise?" I'm like, "It's called Born Again." And I showed her the cover, and yeah,
yeah,
it was fun times.
my mom got briefly involved in the charismatic movement with the Catholics, and it was a lot of speaking in tongues and everything.
They're like, "Will you come to this church with us?" And I'm like, "No, no, no." Finally, I went to one of these damn born again church. Oh, one of these born again churches, and man, the sermon was some of the most racist, xenophobic, hateful bullshit I had heard in my life up to that time. And the great irony of it is, the congregation did speak in tongues and begin dancing. But the irony is the woman beside us, who wasn't, maybe 20s, 30s, her husband was Korean. And
Wow.
I really felt like this is really this is the spoils of colonialism. This is what's happened. We have stolen these people's entire culture and we are forcing them to bow before our gods. God, whatever. So anyway, that was my story about that. But yeah, sounds like a pretty good movie, that Chuck. Actually, the plot's pretty good.
Yeah, no, just they kind of, with next to no budget, kind of going on the theory that, well, good composition don't cost nothing.
If you got the eye, man, you can, and the right people notice you.
And just sometimes when you've got next to nothing to work with, just getting a sense of invention goes a long way. I mean, they actually somehow improved the Evil Dead dolly shot through the woods. I mean,
What
it
they
looked
use, like a shopping cart or something. I heard a lot of people use those for those.
they kind of improv something. I think they had a big they had the guy, the photog, on a plank of wood, and
Okay,
they
with
just
wheel.
actually ran him through the forest. But
Oh no.
they have never clarified. They like to be mysterious about it.
Yeah, cryptic about their
Uh,
methods. So what became of these two young budding auteurs?
they're still out doing stuff. Joel is actually a news photog. He and I have worked in the news industry together.
Oh, okay.
Um, Shane, I think nowadays he's done a lot of stuff. He's been a horror host. He's
You want to give them a shout out on the show in case they're watching?
sure Shane.
Shane, please subscribe.
Um, but he's done a lot of stuff. He's got kind of a show. He's a magician.
Hmm.
Doesn't act with his kid, and just they do a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, I think he did a podcast there for a while.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know. I don't know whether he's still doing it,
Okay.
but
Well, as long as he follows ours, that's what's important.
under the nom de horror of the Reverend Jebediah Buzzard.
Oh my. Evocative.
Uh,
Um, That's pretty wild. Earlier we were talking about necrophilia, and that seems to be a theme that pops up throughout a lot of horror movies, and sometimes it's just kind of incidental, and then sometimes it's like really. And I was remiss to mention a movie that is definitely not a zombie movie, but it's kind of adjacent to the dead girl theme that I covered in an earlier episode there, um, which was the necromantic movies. And I'm surprised I did not mention those to Bill. Uh, he probably has seen those. I was wondering if he felt they had any merit, but I personally, what reminded me of them though was not the necrophilia. I thought about that earlier, but it's what you just said about the composition. Because
Mm.
me and Marksman, Mark Baranowski, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today, this whole session was his idea. Um, he and I used to talk about George Bucharest, and we're like,
Mm.
he's got the eye, man. That's what I call it.
Yes, he
Eye.
does.
Definitely. I mean, the way he can pull back and the way he can, the way you're looking at his world, it's so incredible. I mean, for his meager means,
Oh yeah, I
um,
mean, have you seen Shram?
I've got that sex murder art box set with the first four.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
Shram. Yeah, I think the
yeah,
best
just
made is Der Todd's King. That's kind of like a
yeah, that's my
masterpiece.
favorite.
But Necromantic it never gets old, and the ending of Necromantic never stops making me sick.
Mm.
Yeah.
I know you've probably seen these movies, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah. They're good. They're like nobody else, I guess, does
They
a
they
good.
were they were a big deal when they came out. He
Yeah.
was breaking a lot of ground for horror. And the thing is, since he did have, they were well made. I think that really made a difference. I hope he'll do some more stuff. I'm just giving him an honorable mention. But today we're going to review one that I not only had already always planned to review, but that I actually saw in the movie theater for the first time a few days ago, last Tuesday. So this is Night of the Comet, 1984 by Tom
Oh,
Eberhart. And Night
yeah.
of the Comet is one of these movies that absolutely trips me out. I don't have a huge 80s fetish like Marksman does. I have kind of a borderline fondness, nostalgia, because to be frank, when I was growing up in the 80s, I didn't like any of these movies for the most part. I wasn't interested in them. I didn't like slasher movies. I didn't like disco. I didn't like all, now it's like I like all that stuff. So, um, but I'm more nostalgic toward the 70s, which is the 70s like was the liminal, like on the periphery of my consciousness. I was alive during black exploitation. I saw all the posters and ads in the paper. I saw the full page ad for The Exorcist, and I'm like, "Mommy, what's an exorcist?" I thought The Exorcist was the monster, you know. And but it wasn't until The Devil and Miss Jones, that ad stuck with me for years, and I thought it was a horror movie. I was like, "It's rated X. It's got to be a horror movie." And my mom's like, it's a sex movie. Um, now that's one of my favorites. But so in the 80s, that's how the 80s is to a lot of people now. People a little bit younger than me.
Yeah.
And millennium people, Gen Xers a little younger than me, and then early millennials tend to fetishize the 80s. And there's a lot to fetishize. There really is a period where it's almost surreal that the way America was. And occasionally you'll get a work that almost hits that. Like to me, the first season of Stranger Things
Hmm.
almost got it. They almost resonated.
Hmm.
Uh, season two on, I think they failed. But of course, all of Stranger Things ideas for the '80s came from Panos Cosmatos, uncredited, who did Beyond the Black
Oh
Rainbow
wow.
and Mandy, which are both set in respectively 1982 and 1983. And I do think Cosmatos nailed the '80s in Beyond the Black Rainbow, but it was the '80s of David Cronenberg and that kind of stuff. Mandy, it was like the '80s of I don't know, like some psychedelic trip. You know, heavy metal. It was a lot of it was about heavy metal. The main character was a heavy metal aficionado. Um, but this Night of the Comet was actually in its time, and I did want to see it in the theater because it was a sci-fi movie. That's all I knew about it. I didn't know about zombies. Zombie movies scared me. I still had not even seen Night of the Living Dead and was terrified to see it. And so my mom was like, "No, I can't afford to take you." Now, a few months later, she did drop me off at the theater to see my first R-rated movie by myself. That was barely old enough, was Purple Rain. So recently in Charlotte, this independent picture house, shout out to Brad Ritter, our repertory theater, they did a giant summer of 1984 40-year retrospective. And some of the movies they showed that I thought were stupid back then, I still think they're stupid. I thought, why are you playing the natural in an art house theater? This is just ridiculous, but it's like, but there's a whole, I'm like, I get it. I get it. It's commerce over art. But they played Purple Rain. I've already seen Purple Rain twice in the theater, 30 years apart, and I didn't need to see it again. And I missed a couple that wouldn't have minded seeing, like Brother from Another Planet. I wouldn't have minded seeing that. And, they played some good ones, some bad ones, but they did a whole spectrum. The one I really wanted to see that I missed was Paris, Texas, because I've never seen it. And that was the most artsy movie of all of them. It wasn't because it wasn't an American made movie, even though it was American actors distributed in America. So that's still on my short list. But Night of the Comet, I own the Blu-ray, I owned the DVD, I've watched it many times. But I'm like, I went to see a Ninja Scroll, the 35th anniversary, or I think 30th anniversary. I haven't seen an anime in the theater in a long time, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm asking Brad, hey man, what about Night of the Comet? Did I miss Night of the Comet? The series is winding down. He's like, well, it just played Friday and Saturday. This was a Sunday. And he said, but it's playing Tuesday, and they're only $5. And I'm like, I'm in. I live like a 6-minute drive from this theater. I used to live a 35-minute drive from this theater.
Cool.
And I don't drive, so Ubers are expensive. So I just popped, grabbed a ticket from him right there, $5. Fuck, and I went in Tuesday evening. I had an incredible time. It was totally immersive. I can't say it was like super super step up in the quality from the Blu-ray, but the sound was better. That's what I always notice is the sound is always better seeing these movies in the theater because it's always way louder and mixed a little bit better, depending on what your home stereo system is.
Yeah.
And I don't have a home stereo system anymore, so everything mine go through the TV. Blu-rays sound much better than DVD, but you're not going to pump all that sound out like you can if you have a great system. And in theater, yeah, it's great. So, long story short, I had a good time. What's the movie about? You're thinking, why won't you shut up and just talk about the movie? So, Tom Eberhart had the script, and a few people were attracted to it, and then they were like, "Nah, you can't direct it. You've never directed a feature. This isn't like nowadays where they give, you direct one music video and they give you a feature franchise because they think you're kind of commercial." This was back when it's like, I don't know if we should let this guy direct this movie. Uh, for a studio, but they did, and pretty much his intent stayed the same. He was basically commenting on the culture that was happening at the moment. So this isn't like a retro thing like Stranger Things. This is like a time capsule.
Mhm.
So the main character is Regina Belmont or Reggie. She works in a movie theater. All this is just very well thought out. She works in a movie theater, and this was 1984. So the arcade games were huge, and she plays one all the time, even on the clock. And this was realistic too, because in the 80s, you could do something brazen like that on the clock, and all that happened was your boss would be like, hey, cut it out. And then you'd give them some kind of, leave me alone, man, down with the man. And then you go back to work. Nowadays, you're fired immediately. You're gone. You never had any benefits to begin with if you can get hired. So that's where the 80s was different. I'm not going to say the economy was better. I'm not a fan of Reaganomics, trickle down economics. I know it's harder for minorities. Uh, my family did okay. Me personally, just working a full-time job though, I could buy a lot of stuff, man. Work just being a bagger at a grocery store, and that's what I became in 1985, and a year after this film. So I this film came out. I was in high school, and like I said, I couldn't go see it, but I would have loved it. Now, Mary Catherine Stewart. So she's the star, and actually, she was 25 when she made this movie, playing a 17-year-old. I didn't know till today that she was 25. Um, Playing her little sister's Kelly Maroney as Samantha Belmont or Sam, and they have a really adorable interaction. Kelly Maroney is very iconic. She's also really active on social media now, and I've interacted with her. Her husband wishes me Merry Christmas every year. I'm not sure how that happened, but he texts me every Christmas. And one Christmas he texted me, and I was smashed. And I was just started babbling about how much I love Night of the Comet, and I was like, "Can you please tell Kelly how much I love the Comet, man?" And he's like, Yeah, you're partying, aren't you? I'm like, yeah, I'm celebrating, man. I'm pretty smashed. He's like, okay, Henry, I'll tell her goodbye. But and then she dropped me as a friend. But that's okay. Marksman, who is going to be here today, he's interacted with her a good bit. She is very good to her fan base. Does a lot of conventions. Now her age is now currently unknown. I think at one point it was known, but it's been struck from Wikipedia and all records. So
Huh.
all I know is she was playing a 16-year-old at most, 15 or 16-year-old character, and she was at the very least 20 to 23 when she's playing this character. She might be older than Mary Catherine Stewart, or maybe not, but she was able to play these young roles for quite a while. So, like right before this, she did Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And then she became kind of an ingenue. I kind of saw her as like a Hollywood version of Cheryl Rainbow Smith. This pretty young blonde girl who pops up in all these movies and has this ingenue thing to her. Um, but anyway, they're sisters. She's a cheerleader, Sam, the little sister, and Reggie is the theater attendant who plays video games, and she's always getting sabotaged by someone with the DMK initials because she's so rabid that she insists on having the top 10 score. She can't just be the number one. She has to fill all the other slots. And I don't know if who remembers these arcade ones. The only one I ever got hooked on was Double Dragon. That was about 1988. But that was just like that. And so she's like, damn, so, but the thing is, it's not cheesy. I mean, some people might think it's cheesy. I know it was a popular movie when it came out. It was made for $700,000 and it made 14 million in the US alone. So that's a hit. That's a blockbuster. I mean, people will tell you a movie is a blockbuster because it made a huge amount of money. No, the hit is what makes huge amount of money in proportion to its budget.
Yeah.
So, Night of the Comet is a much bigger hit than the last five Marvel movies. So, proportionately. So, um, yeah, and so that's just their life. She sleeps with the guy who works in the projection room, and he's a rabid collector. This was kind of its time, but ahead of its time. It would be timely nowadays. He's like a geek like us, and he collects film prints and film posters, and he's kind of a dick, but he's kind of an amiable dick, but he's always trying to hustle, and for whatever reason, Reggie, we don't really get deep into it, but for whatever reason, she just, sometimes she has sex with this guy. It's pretty casual, and there's no like, oh my God, she's 17, oh my God, are they in love? This is a very different time, folks, very different time. So, and this was not an R-rated movie either. It was a hard PG, but it probably should have been rated R though, actually. Maybe it was. I don't know. I don't think it was. Unimportant. So one of these times when they sleep in the projection room, uh, there's her stepmother and Sam's stepmother is having this massive party because Haley's Comet is returning and everybody's going to see it visibly in the air. So their stepmother, played by Sharon Farrell, who's played some memorable parts like in Out of the Blue and what's the other one that I really liked her in, where she's actually likable. She's not likable in this one or Out of the Blue, but Farrell played in It's Alive. She was the mother in the original It's Alive. So she was great in
Oh,
that. And she died not too long ago. I think she was 80 something. Um, but she's a really mean stepmother, and the father's doing business. Again, it's kind of its time. The father apparently is some businessman man who has contracts with the government, who's in South America doing hustling deals with the Sandinistas. For they hint at it's kind of like an Iran Contra thing, but they don't act like it's a scandal. They act just like Reagan acted about it. They act like, oh, it's great, it's fun, it's no problem, man. And so in a way, there's some satire there. I thought was pretty cool, and so anyway, Doris and everyone, gets turned to red dust, and really everyone except our main characters, because Doris it's kind of a funny scene, and the people in the theater actually laughed, which I was happy about because this seems like the kind of thing that would cancel people. But mother slaps her, stepmother slaps Sam, Sam slaps her back, and then the mother like does this, like punches her, cold cocks her, she goes flying around the room, and it's comical, but Sam's expression is very sad. And she's playing it straight, but people in my theater laughed, and I was actually proud that there were some people out there who weren't going to be like, "Oh my God, she punched a teenager. We've got to ban this movie." And So, needless to say, she sleeps in this steel shed, and they're sleeping. Um, Reggie and the dude, the movie dude, collector dude, they're sleeping it's like a steel silo. It's basically the back of the theater. It's the projection room, and it's metal line. And they even make a joke about it in between having sex, which is like they talk about Superman, and he's like, Superman can't see through steel. And she's like, no, you idiot, it's lead. Superman can't see through lead. And so, you know, another cool thing, again, this is very subtle stuff, but I like to put it in the context of its time. So you can already figure out these two geeks are getting together, but actually Reggie's way smarter than the guy. And she continues to do this throughout the movie. Her character continues to go against all these stereotypes or expectations of this kind of character, even of a heroine, and I thought that was fantastic. Very, I guess you could say it was empowering. So I know a lot of women like this movie. I could see why. Um, so they wake up the next day and having, been in steel reinforced things, they're kind of making fun of the Superman lead thing is they didn't get affected by the comet radiation. So everyone else is red dust and this is not CGI either. So they blocked off huge amounts of Los Angeles. That must have been most of the movie budget. Blocking off huge amounts of Los Angeles, just like in the Omega Man. And it's very similar to that. And wide shots, you don't see anybody. And I'm always in awe of movies from that period that did that because they had to actually really do it. Now you just race everybody out, which I'd probably rather do that myself. I mean, but I'm just saying. Um, so it takes them a while to figure out what the hell is going on. Right? But one thing they find out quickly, Reggie, is that the people who haven't turned to red dust are turned into zombies. So there's like this progressive layers of radiation. Like some people it just wipes out outright. Some people have partial protection. Maybe they're behind some other kind of metal or in some other situation. Uh, they just get a little kind of infected progressively. We meet those later in the movie. But then the terminal point before they crumble is they're zombies. And they are flesh eating zombies. They don't play it up much because it probably because it wasn't an R-rated movie. But they make it pretty clear the first zombie grabs Sam. She kills the projectionist boyfriend, and then she attacks her, and then she knocks him down. He gets away, and then he's behind a trash compactor, and he's got this red meat. It looks like it's giant sirloin from the grocery store. The implication is that that's what's left of Sam's boyfriend. But they don't it's not Romero-esque where they make like super like he's pulling the intestines out of the guy, but it's like okay, yeah, he's a Romero zombie, but that's only one phase. So that's why I count this as a zombie undead movie like we've been covering because there's a phase to where they go dead and zombie and then dissolve. It's not like 28 days later where they get the disease and there are stages, but they kind of quickly go crazy, but they never really are dead until you kill them. These zombies can be killed, and it seems like the characters have figured out pretty quick to shoot them in the head. Unlike Hell of the Living Dead, which I reviewed recently, they figured it out early in the movie, and then they kept forgetting it in every subsequent scene. And I wasn't the one who pointed this out. It was somebody else on our panel. I don't remember if it was Briggy, but or Justin, but it was like, yeah, that's right. They keep forgetting to shoot him in the head. So this chick, she's like warning these people who are accosting her. She's like, I'm warning you, I have martial arts. I know how to handle myself as a woman. And this was during the period where that was becoming a thing, like women's self-defense against mugging in the big cities. And sure enough, she does. She uses martial arts and knocks the hell out of him. And then steals the motorcycle and goes away. And she's got a really fucking cool outfit that has not dated, to me, not dated, maybe to some people. But reunites with her sister at home and the sister's just not getting it, and then they're like, okay, well that's what's left of everybody, this little red dust. So they go on a little journey because they hear a radio broadcast. So they go to the radio station. It turns out it's a canned pre-record thing. So damn, but they do encounter a character called Hector Gomez, played by Robert Beltran. um and I told you a little about these two young ladies. Robert Beltran didn't have quite as illustrious an early career as them, but uh, he hooked up with Paul Bartel and did some movies. He did Eating Raoul 2 years before this, And he also did Scenes from the Class Struggle in Beverly Hills a few years after, which I personally think is
Okay.
hilarious.
Oh yeah.
Love that movie. And there's a lot of crossover because Mary Warrenov is in this film, and she was also in Edie Rowell
Uh,
and the Class Struggle. She was kind of Paul Bartel's muse, and
yeah.
they played the characters Mary and I forgot the husband's name. They're called the Blands, and they
Yeah.
star in Edie Rowell with Robert Beltran as Raoul. But then they reappear in Chopping Mall with it by a different director as the same characters, which has Kelly Maroney, who's there now in the comment. So this was like a big Ouroboros researching this movie. It was kind of fun. Um, and yes, I've seen all those movies, thank goodness, but it took me a long time. Um, but yeah, so then they just basically they of course they're wary of Hector, and another cool thing is Hector. Okay, so he's a Hispanic character. No, a Los Angeles dude, he totally proud guy. He's like the male hero. He's not really the hero of the movie. That's Reggie, but he's like the hero of the movie, male hero. And this was the time when LA Punk was big, and a lot of it was Latino, like the what was the group that did the New Wave Hookers theme?
Oh, the plugs.
Yeah, the Plugs, and of course Los Lobos, and I forgot the name of
Yeah.
the other big one. But there is a lot of Hispanic people in The Decline of Western Civilization, parts one and two. A lot of Hispanic kids in LA
Yeah.
who were into this scene, and of course in Repo Man also.
Yeah.
Dick Rude, who was a real life punk and a screenwriter, an actor, he was one of the hoodlums in Repo Man. Well, he's also a hoodlum in this movie
Yeah. The
later on.
plugs were also in that.
The Plugs were in which one?
Repo Man.
Oh, I forgot that.
Yeah, it
And
did some great stuff.
yeah, you reviewed that recently. Oh, that played this bill also, and I did
Uh,
intend to see it, and I just couldn't at the last minute. And it was the week you reviewed it, so I felt bad. But so I had to jump on this one. Um, so yeah, once they hook up with him and there's no misunderstandings, and they realize that, okay, we're the only living people that aren't zombies or dust. There becomes the of course, pressing matter: which of the two women is going to get the guy, the only guy left on Earth? And so they argue about it. It's pretty hilarious. And Sam, the character, the cheerleader, she wears the cheerleader outfit like through the first half of the movie. Irrepressible character. I mean, these two women have so much energy. It's just like infectious. So, um, yeah. So the next thing that happens is that at the beginning of the movie, there's a little narration that talks about the comet coming, and he makes a comment. The narrator makes a comment that some people were prepared, and it just gives you a shot of these people in this kind of metal building, and they're wearing these kind of overalls, gray overalls. So they're planting the seed that there's some kind of think tank that's trying to survive this, who's maybe foreseen it happening, who want to try to cure it. They even wear similar outfits as, I mean, this movie came later, but they're wearing similar outfits that Sarah wears in Day of the Dead. Just the kind of overalls thing, but it's kind of that kind of idea. I'm not saying Romero took the idea, but it's kind of all in the general, the same general kind of tropes.
yeah.
So these scientists decide they're going to round up these survivors in LA. And, at first, some of them are altruistic, like this character, Audrey, played by Mary Warrenoff. She's like the only one of the scientists who's not like a complete pervert, deviant, nihilist, or out for themselves. She actually cares. And they decide that, well, little Sam has got the disease because she's got a rash. And so they decide to tell her to mercy kill her before she can become a zombie. So Audrey mercy kills her, but she really just gives her sodium pentothal. So she sneaks around. That's when Audrey turns on the other scientists, and they still don't know for sure she's against them, but she's hiding these secrets. So they picked up Reggie. Hector's got away because he went to go see his dead family's house and whatever. He comes back, and of course, he's stolen a really nice car, and now he's dressed like a cowboy. Because they really exploit the point over, just like in the Omega Man, where you have access now to everything. It's all good. Even back to that movie. Oh damn, it was an old movie, like late 50s, early 60s movie like this, and I can't remember the name of it. I saw it recently for the first time, and it was the same idea. They started doing the same thing. They're like basically looting, but they're not looting. So, um, one thing that happens to the girls and their little journey before they finally get captured by the think tank is they go shopping for clothes and they go to this department store. So these three they call them in the credit Stock Boys, and one of them's played by Dick Rude, and he's basically playing the same character he played in Repo Man. Let's be honest, it's just about the same exact character. And the leader of these three guys is a little more advanced than the others. Like it's getting into Omega Man territory where he's wearing the sunglasses. That's the first sign. It's not the rash. See, those other scientists were stupid. They really thought Sam had it. Sam doesn't have the disease, but these people do, and they kind of know it, and they're like nihilist punks. They're like basically we're just they don't like these girls shopping in the shopping center because they've decided they own this shopping center and the whole fucking city. And they get on the intercom and talk trash to them, like, hey, shoppers, we see you. And, working in a grocery store around this time, I really got a lot of nostalgia with this because I used to love to sneak and get the intercom and say insane things. um, it was, again, nowadays, well, you'd be fired, never employed again. Back then it's like, oh, there's Henry joking around my intercom. The 80s was a little freewheeling compared to now. So, um, yeah, so those guys get violent with him, but by this time, the girls have these little submachine guns. I forgot what they call them. They're not Uzis because Sam complains that they don't have Uzis, which their father uses. Again, going back to the thing that he's dealing with, like the Sandinistas and the Iron Contra. And so that's how Sam knows how to shoot. The father taught her how to shoot. And so, Sam is not really a great shot and a great fighter, but she's really young and spunky and fast. But Reggie is all those things. So they managed to take on these people, but they still need rescuing, sadly. And that's where the scientists come in. They, kill all of them, and then they take these two girls away. And like I said, the one gets seemingly killed, but Reggie comes into the whole nerve center of the place. And the head guy is Dr. Carter, played by Jeffrey Lewis, famous character actor, father of Juliette Lewis. I can't list how many movies and TV shows he's been in. He's
Yeah,
absolutely the guy. Oh, I know that guy. You know,
yeah.
he's kind of a scumbag, and he already has the symptoms and is starting to progress, and he knows it. So what they're trying to do is round up people they know do not have it and take their blood out so they won't turn. And who cares if they kill these people? So they round up these children too. So, there's a dark, dark motive here, despite the levity of the movie on the surface. And but only one who gets it is Mary Warrenoff's character, and she kills some of her fellow scientists, and she finally kind of sacrifices herself, and the two sisters are reunited. And Hector comes along, and Hector does quote unquote rescue them. And he when he goes to the gate of the place, the guard's like, "Who are you?" And he's just like, and he talks like a redneck on purpose. He's Hispanic, but he talks like a redneck, and he's dressed as a cowboy, and he has a kind of a 50s convertible. It's bold red. And he's like, "Hey, partner, I'm Hector Gomez." And he starts talking, just talking smack to this guard with a machine gun. And he takes him out. And I don't mean on a date. And he takes out the guard and reunites with the girls. And Carter, Jeffrey Lewis, and his guys are Carter's like full on bloodthirsty, and they know he's turning. Even his own people know he's turning, and he's like, "Get him! We've got to kill him now!" And they get this, and just very casually, nonchalantly, we find out that Hector Gomez sabotaged their little truck, and they look back and all of them are blown to absolute smithereens, and our heroes just laugh their ass off. Again, something some critics nowadays, well, even back then, Roger Ebert probably was like, "That's immoral," but it's like it's a movie. So, and they were going to turn to zombies and kill them anyway. Um, so they take the kids with them. It's two kids, a young boy and a young, to their credit, a young Asian girl. That was cool too. And basically they form like a family. So the choice has been made. Reggie is with Hector, and they're like the surrogate parents to these two kids. And they've all gone to the department stores and dressed in these 80s like suits and suburban clothes, really rich, fancy dress and a really fancy kind of zoot suit from the 80s. And meanwhile, Sam's like the same old, she's not wearing a cheerleader outfit anymore, but she's wearing like this, like barely wearing any clothes. But it's very 80s. It's very Madonna-esque, like low cut, the skin tight, her boobs are sticking out, but she has all this kind of filigree and finery, and she's dancing around. And her luck turns out that the guy in a car finds them, and the guy she decides, well, I'm gonna go have sex with this guy. I mean, it's pretty obvious from their body language and the minimal dialogue, and it's like that's probably how it really would be, because you're kind of reduced to like an animal state almost. It's like I'm not gonna get this chance again. Okay, sure, there's no morals involved but they even have witty dialogue for this because Reggie's like, you can't cross against the light, Sam. And Sam's like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's no one here. And she starts running across the street and she's like, and Reggie's like, we are upholding the pillars of civilization. It is on our shoulders. The future rests with us. And it's like, on one hand, she's fucking with her and being silly. But on the other hand, she's telling the truth. And so when the guy picks her up, Sam's like, he's like, what do you want to do? She's like, well, we've got to uphold the pillars of civilization. And I guess that means procreating, right? And so it's a really beautiful, happy ending, and everybody's happy, and except the billions of people who got turned to ash. And I don't know, watching the theater was really good. It was actually an audience that reacted. It was an audience of mostly people my age or older, which makes sense. Probably the whole audience was in junior high, high school, or college when this came out. So there were a few younger people, and true to form, they didn't get any of the jokes or have any reaction. They were the typical Charlotte movie audience. They were like, whereas all the older people were like, yeah, and laughing and shit. So that was interesting. That was interesting. So it was a great experience. So I wanted to round out this session with this zombie movie. Very, very, I don't want to say overrated. It's very rated. It's very well loved, but I think it's underrated by hardcore horror fans because it's not as gory. Maybe they're sick of the 80s and they're over it. But then you got people like Marksman who wanted to do the session with us, and it's one of his favorite movies. He loves 80s music. He loves the whole soundtrack to this movie. I don't. I think it fits. I don't think it's great music, but it definitely is 80s. It's definitely fun. The one song they couldn't use on the soundtrack for maybe obvious copyright reasons was Girls Want to Have Fun. And to me, the most joyous scene in the whole movie is when the two sisters are in the department store and they're dressing in all the clothes and the jewelry, and they're dancing to that song, and they keep cutting back and forth, and they both are dancing like super in rhythm to the beat of the song, and the cuts are to the beat of the song. And it's just like that joie de vivre. And it's almost like, damn, I wish I was more alert and aware in 1984 than the kid in the shell that I was. I could have had a fucking blast. Now I did have a blast in 1987, but it was I didn't have a blast in high school. But that's when this was happening, and of course the fact the actresses were in their mid 20s, that doesn't dull it at all because they very totally sell it. So I highly recommend Night of the Comet. There are these 80s retrospectives. I've been told by friends of the show and people on the show who live in other cities and countries that it's kind of all over the world right now. It's at art house theaters. So if any of you guys have a chance to see Night of the Comet in, Chicago or Australia or wherever, I would say check it out. It's worth it. So I want to ask everybody to like and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to hit the magic number of 1,000 subscribers, and share it with your friends, neighbors, some incidental people on Facebook, on social media platforms, TikTok, whatever you do. And, we're happy to do the show. We love doing the show, and, we're happy that it's growing, and we just wanted to keep growing. So, we can't do without whoever's watching. So please, help us out and give a shout out to friends of the show. We have a lot of friends of the show that I always credit at the end, but we'll go ahead and give a shout to Yvette Izan, who is not only a friend of the show, but now a guest star panelist on the show. We love you, Yvette, and I especially want to mention Tim McLean and Nicola Nazarena. They are the first two people who ever watch our videos and like them. And of course, we've got to give a shout out to someone Chuck knows really well, Heather Drain, for just being behind the scenes with him and also being an inspiration. We hope to get Heather on the show one of these days if y'all can share a screen or something.
Mhm.
But so yeah, that's where we're at. So have a good night. Thank you.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. in the night from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died